Welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
It's my absolute pleasure. I'm really good, actually. I'm really well. Touch wood, I'm healthy and my family is healthy. It's an absolutely crazy time we're living in. And I just think, I've become even more grateful than I've ever been before to be standing upright and to be able to work from home and, sending love and prayers to everyone who's not been able to do that. It's been a really interesting time, I think, for everyone. And I think, I love the fact that humans have been able to evolve for many millions of years. And we're also now evolving again, because it's sort of in our DNA to evolve, isn't it? And to adapt and accept and to move on. So I guess if we can take anything positive from this, is that we're trying to do the best we can with what we've got, really.
I love that attitude. I love that attitude. With so much kind of negativity in the world right now, sort of thinking about things in that perspective, I think makes a big difference. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh,
Can
gosh,
you where are you right now? Whereabouts are you in the UK or
I'm
wherever
at
you are?
home. I'm in my living room. I'm in southwest London, so I'm in Fulham. I am Irish by trade, and I suppose I've been here for a very long time. It's interesting, actually. Another thing that's come out of isolation and lockdown and this whole situation for my husband and I. He's from Hove, down the south coast, and we realised we don't need to be in London anymore. London is great. It's great for nightlife. And, we're sort of getting to the point now where we're in bed by 10 o'clock anyway. We don't really dine out or thinking about moving to Hove, because we've realised that we don't really need to be in London. And, I think the realisation that we don't have to do something and we can actually do something that we really want to do has been quite empowering, really. So the move to the coast is very much imminent. In fact, I think we're moving at the end of October for a little while. So we'll be back and forward to London for work, bits and pieces. But the mainstay is going to be by the ocean. His parents are there, so that will be really, really nice. And I'm going to try sea dipping every day. Come back to me by December and see if I'm still saying that.
Let us know what that's like. Let us know.
I will. Well, I am actually doing, I'm doing cold showers every morning, which has been an eye-opener, to say the least. I am absolutely loving it. The cold sea dipping I've done quite a bit of this summer, which was a really hot summer. So I can't say it's going to be that easy by the time we get there in October, November and December. But we'll see. The challenge is ahead of me.
Amazing. You do feel so good doing that. My very limited experience recently was being in Cornwall and just going in the sea every day, and it really does just set you up for the day and you feel so good. And
it does. It gives you, I think it gives you a few things. So it gives you a massive shock, which is it's that mental clarity that it gives you, that split second of mental clarity. And I find ever since I've been doing it, I have felt a lot more alive in the morning, which is, a strange thing to say because it's the morning. We should all feel alive. And yes, for the most part, I do. However, I used to not feel alive until I had my first coffee. Now I'm, ping. And what I tend to try and do is when I'm in that moment and I'm in the shower, I scream my gratitude. And I think it's a really good way of sort of practicing your gratitude. So I'll go, thank you so much for hot water, or, oh, I'm so glad of electricity, or, Wi-Fi, hurrah. And there's so many things, and breath and my body's ability to not die in this cold water. So there's so many things that we can be grateful for, tiny, teeny little things. And it's a really good place to do it because you sort of have to keep your mind active and doing something. So why not, right? It's sort of combining two things where we're extending our health span by taking cold showers, and we're also expanding our gratitude practice.
I just love that. Scream your gratitude. Is that what you said?
Scream it to the high heavens as loud as you can. I actually have this really weird thing that it's a mantra, and I don't know where it came from. I'm a massive, massive believer in the universe. I absolutely love the universe, and I love to envision the universe. And I also love unicorns, just the idea of unicorns, the idea that they don't exist, but they could do, this is sort of mythical creature. And so I just screech, universe and unicorns for the first few seconds that I get in. And weirdly, it calms me down. And then I go on to my gratitude part. But I think if you can have some kind of mantra that makes you feel good, then yeah, that's a really good way of trying to get your mind off the fact that you're in ice cold water.
That's brilliant. I think doing something like that, that it can just change your state and just change your energy, is perfect for the morning. I think probably most people wake up not really feeling alive first thing in the morning, and most people do still kind of, rely on that coffee. So
Absolutely.
definitely think your
Yeah.
work and your amazing book. I'm just going to show a
Thank
picture of the people that are watching the
you.
video. The Switch has come at a perfect time. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's really funny. It's really relatable. It's almost like you could just have that on your coffee table. It's so beautiful, and
Thank you.
dip in and out of it or read it in one go. I'm sure many people have. Um, could you share a bit about, what it is that you do and how you came to write the book?
Well, so, gosh, thank you, first of all, for all those lovely compliments. Part of the book is actually, I talk about the mindset and switching the narrative, and how we've all learned to reject compliments very easily. We squat them off kind of like, with lightning fast reaction. And so, to say thank you very much, that's very kind of you, Chloe. I really appreciate that, is sort of a part of my growth and trying to switch that narrative. So, yes, well, it's interesting because I suppose you would say I am a TV presenter by trade. That's what I do for the guts of my living. I started out in Ireland as a model, fashion model. And then I quickly moved on to breakfast television. So the first TV show I ever did was a show called Ireland AM. It was Ireland's first morning show. And then I moved on to an English breakfast show called The Big Breakfast, which some of your slightly older generation viewers and listeners will remember. And then I sort of moved to America, I guess. Yeah, that was my progression. I went and I did a few reality shows out there. One called Paradise Hotel. It was the original Love Island. And one called The Swan, which was sort of like an extreme makeover. Crazy, crazy show. And then I moved back to the UK and I did shows like Total Wipeout, and I'm now hosting a show called Food Unwrapped on Channel 4, which is a passion of mine, obviously, because I love everything to do with nutrition and the body and food. But what I will say to that is just something really interesting, because I've learned to reject labels and definitions. And I think that's a really important thing. And I talk about this quite a lot in the book, is that, I am a TV host, I am an author, I am a PT, I am a nutritionist, I am all of those things. I'm just not one of them, which I think is really, really a great little tip for people who, on a daily basis feel like they're boxed into one thing. Even I am a mother, or I am childless, or I am a wife, or I am a daughter, all of those things, these labels and definitions, I think it's key because they can be quite destructive. So I like to call it the CV of life. And, I sort of, as I was branching out into doing other things, initially I got really worried because I thought people are going to think I'm not a TV presenter anymore. They're going to think I'm a personal trainer now. And what am I going to do? And I'm never going to get chosen to do a TV show again because they think I'm into fitness and health. Or I'm an author now. I'm not going to do anything else but that. And I slowly realized that, isn't it great that we can do whatever we want at any stage? It's the CV of life. So yeah, I think that's just an interesting little sort of mindset that I've come to believe in. And I think it's great. It's a really positive thought process. And so, yeah, in that is author, I guess, now, first book, which is really exciting. And I wrote a book called The Switch, which you've just touched on. And the reason I wrote it was because I struggled for very, very many decades, for almost 3 decades, with body image issues. And, the need to be perfect, the need to be the perfect daughter and sister and partner and career woman and the strongest. I say in the book, we want to be Angelina in the nursery, J-Lo in the boardroom, Oprah in the boardroom, J-Lo in the gym, and Nigella in the kitchen. We just want to be the perfect everything. And to boot, we want to have the perfect physique, and we don't want any help from anyone, and we can do this. And yes, we are strong. Humans are incredible, and women and men alike are wonderful. We just don't need to try and be the best at everything, because that's really destructive as well. So for me, I had 3 decades of body image issues. I was always struggling with my weight, even though to the naked eye, literally, pardon the pun, I was in great shape. I was a size 8 to 10, but that just wasn't reflective of what was going on inside my mind. And it started, I think, when I was about 15. And there was, I talk about a mental switch that sort of refers to the moment in time where once and for all, I sort of went back to that original switch that switched when I was about 15, and that sort of spiraled into my body image issues. It was a friend who commented on a little bit of fat poking out of my cycling shorts. And it was also the time of the supermodel era, and it was also the time of yo-yo diets and the Atkins diet and quick fix diets. And, the media was very much pushing, lose 7 pounds in 7 seconds. So all of this combined sort of piled on top of me, I think then created my long and very destructive relationship with my body and with food, more interestingly, because that's what's really important. We have to get that back. So my switch moment, it starts with a single moment of realization, and that then is followed by sort of a series of actions to make that switch to a healthier, happier you. And that switch moment is personal to each and every one of us. It could be completely different for everyone. So my mental switch flicking, I promised myself at that moment, I was approaching my 40th birthday. I knew I needed to make a change because I was just exhausted. I was exhausted mentally and physically and emotionally. I'd been making bad dietary decisions. I was striving for perfection, that need to please. I was unkind to myself, my body, and I just was exhausted. And I thought, F it, I'm done. I don't want to turn 50 or 60 or 70 and still be like this and still be this exhausted. So what I always say to women is, that switch moment can be any time that you choose it. Your time is now. If you want your switch moment to be now, if you're ready for that, then it's now. And there's no bad time to make the switch. You could be in your 20s and you could sort of be burning the candle at both ends, or you could be in your 30s, sort of juggling a career and a party lifestyle and maybe having kids, or you could be in your 40s and have, elderly parents and kids on one end. It could come at absolutely any stage. And that moment, I believe, is up to you to make it. So yeah, I also talk about the fact that, while it took me 30 long years of making those mistakes, you can be any age when you make the switch. And I really wish I'd had the information that I then went on to learn, which is why I was able to make the switch, the education about food and the body and the mind. And I wish I'd had that at 15 or 16 or 17. And now we're really in danger because we've got social media and all of the young girls and boys, and they're listening to all of these negative comments and the lack of likes and all of these things that really don't matter at all. And they feel like they matter. And so it's about education. It's about understanding, it's about understanding food. It's about understanding the way our mind works. It's about understanding the external voices, which I'm sure we'll get to, and the internal voices, and how to really switch those things. So once my switch had flipped, I really had to do the work to replace those old habits with the new ones that I was learning, and sort of switch my brain back to sane, so to speak. And first thing I did was I educated myself about the science of how our bodies work, and why retraining the brain to kind of understand that relationship between brain and body, that's so important. And then I learned how to eat well, exercise well, and sort of respect the body that I'd been so unkind to. And I realized that you don't have to do ugly things to your body to be happy and, to have a beautiful mind and body. And then I think, ultimately I learned to love myself internally, because that is the key. Unless you can love yourself internally, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter whether you're a 0 or a size 40. It doesn't matter. You have to be happy within. And so, yes, that was sort of the long version of why I wrote the book and how I wrote the book and what the book is about.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I think there's so much in there that addresses, all these different areas of our lives. And you just give really practical little switches that we can make to change things and feel so much better. And yeah, I love that idea as well of actually we can decide when we make that switch. We don't have to be like, I don't know, rock bottom or something like that. Actually just educating ourselves and making that decision and being proactive, we can do that for ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think it's really key as well. And you sort of tipped on that. That's why I thought it was really important to put the switch tips in, because actually I spent almost 3 decades making all these mistakes, assimilating them and remaking the same mistakes again and again and again. And, you know, finally I learned, and I learned the hard way. And so what I wanted to do was, rather than preach to people, look, don't do this, do that, because no one responds well to being preached to. We don't want to be told what to do or how to live our lives. And I certainly didn't want that either. And that's why it took me so long. And so what I wanted to do was just sort of give everyone the information and say, look, if you want this information, here it is. I'm handing it to you on a platter. Do with it what you will. I'm not telling you have to do it. Just when your switch moment comes and when you're ready, you can digest it then, and then you can move forward and make those steps if that's what you really want to do.
One thing you mentioned there was about the kind of inner voices, the kind of voice in our heads. And I think when I speak to people, that is the thing that comes up probably more than anything as being something that holds us back or drags us down or causes problems, is kind of inner critic.
Yes.
What was your experience of this? And can you share a little bit about what may have helped you and what you think can help others?
Absolutely. Yeah, I talk a lot about it in the book, and I'm delighted that you talk about it as well, because ultimately, you know, we can call it one of very many things. Some people call it the shadow, some people call it mental chatter, some people call it the ego, inner voice, mental intercom. You know, it's whatever you want to call it. It's the voice within that has replaced the positive voices that we grew up with. So if you think about when you're a young child, you know, what do you hear? You hear your parents, your aunts, your uncles, the people around you saying, oh, Chloe, you're wonderful, you're brilliant, you sing so well, even if you don't. You came down the slide the best, even if you fell off it. You know, you're the best dancer in the world, even if you can't put two footsteps together. You know, you walk the best, even though you might have fallen right over. You poo-pooed the best. Everything is the best, the best, the best, right? So we start off with these gorgeous championing voices all around us. It's all we know. It's all we're used to. Then as we get older, we start to listen to the external voices a little bit more. So we're in school and maybe someone is bullying you, or, you know, nowadays it's social media. So maybe now you're not getting likes or someone's making a trolly comment. Then we get into our late teens and our 20s and we're going to work, and then we're not coming up to scratch at work. And we've got, you know, those sort of office negative vibes, or someone saying that you're not good enough, or you haven't hit that target, or, you know, your budget didn't come in right. Then we get into our 30s and, you know, serious relationships, and, you know, maybe someone is telling us we're not good enough. All of a sudden, those really brilliant championing voices that are on this side are starting to get drowned out by the negative ones on this side. And we're starting to really believe these negative ones, because that critical voice, I mean, mine, I say in the book, you know, she was bitch supreme, and I couldn't silence her because that voice was actually me. And, you know, you don't realize it. And some people say, you know, do you mean you talk to yourself? Well, no, of course not. We all have 70,000 plus thoughts a day. And a lot of them are going to be ourselves talking to ourselves, setting these impossibly high standards in every aspect of our being. And so then we find ourselves in our late 30s going, I need to read a self-help book. I need to do something about this. This is crazy. And really what we have to do is, from a very early age, we should be drowning out those negative voices, or being taught to drown those negative voices out. Because, you know, like I say, mine is, I call her Mrs. Zippy. And I don't know if you remember Rainbow growing up, the kids' TV show. So Mrs. Zippy is, I basically call her out. So I call my voice out. So rather than have this voice and sort of go, oh, there's negative voices, and I listen to them and then, you know, reject compliments, or I tell myself I'm stupid, or, oh, I can't believe I did that. I'm such an idiot. I'm so clumsy. I'm such a bad person. I'm such a bad friend. I'm such a bad wife. These are the thoughts, the negative voices that are constant. You know, you sort of call it out and go, oh, hey, voice. Hey, mental chatter. Hey, Mrs. Zippy. I see you. And you shine a spotlight on that voice. So one of the big tips I have is to visualize this voice as a thing, as a person, as a puppet. Personally, I think that works for me, because it means I've got my hand stuck up her backside and I can just as easily shut her up. And so that for me is the key, is that you have to call it out, see it for what it is. And rather than listen to these internal voices, go, no, I'm not stupid. I'm not clumsy. Maybe I had a fall today. Maybe I should have done something that I thought I should, is such a negative word anyway. We're all doing our best all the time. So I think that's the key. It's really, really important to just listen to the good voices, listen to yourself, those silly voices in our heads that we just don't recognize our brilliance on a day-to-day basis, and we are absolutely brilliant. So, rather than focus on the failures or focus on the things we think we should do, we have to just get life's positive moments because they go unnoticed, and we have to champion ourselves. Look in yourself in the mirror and go, you're awesome. You are one fabulous, foxy, fortuitous. And in the book, I say the F word. I won't say that on the podcast because it's not very ladylike. There's just really great tips. And then if you can't do any of those, I say the sort of the quickest and the simplest tip is to do a breathing interrupt. So a pattern interrupt, which is, it's 16 seconds. So you breathe in for 8 and you breathe out for 8 and you hold your breath in the middle, and then that's a pattern interrupt. So your mind sort of stops itself from thinking these negative things. And just be vigilant, don't listen to the voices because they are you, and you can just as easily unlisten to them, so to speak.
That's really powerful. Yeah, I love that, of having a pattern interrupt, because we can get ourselves spiraling sometimes in negative thoughts or beating ourselves up about things, sort of interrupting it and then turning the critical voice into a thing, so we can actually take a step back and we realize actually it's not necessarily true what it's saying. We can create a bit of space and a bit of distance there.
Absolutely. And I think if you give it a funny visual, so that's why mine is Mississippi, because it's the most ludicrous looking puppet ever. It's this sort of spaceship head. It's got a zip on it. It talks like that. And so when I had those, I very rarely have them anymore because I learned how to drown out those voices. And genuinely, when I had those visuals of this thing going, you're an idiot, I would go, oh, well, that's hilarious. So I'm clearly not an idiot. You are. And I know it may sound crazy, and I know that I've spoken to a lot of women who I say, just look at yourself in the mirror, stare at yourself in the eye and go, you're wonderful, you're brilliant, you're fantastic, you've achieved so much, you will achieve so much, you're just an awesome creature, you're a wonderful human. And if that doesn't work, and you still find yourself being really, really down on yourself and really unkind and cruel to yourself, take a photograph of yourself when you were 3 years of age, 3 or 4, whatever you can find, and look at that photograph. Now close your eyes and imagine yourself hugging that little girl. Just hug her, because she is you. She literally is you. It's just you've grown up a little bit. It's the same brain, it's the same eyes, it's the same skin. You're just a bigger version of that child, but she's you. And apologize. I think it's really powerful to say sorry to yourself. And if you can't look in the mirror and do that, then take yourself out of body and apologize to the 3-year-old you, because she's so innocent. She didn't deserve these nasty voices. She's being championed right now by her awesome parents who or her siblings or those people around her saying her poo-poo's the best. All of a sudden, she's being told she's a piece of crap. So there are definitely really, really subtle tricks that we can use. And I think it's really important to just believe in ourselves, because otherwise we can't expect other people to believe in us if we don't believe in ourselves.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's so easy for us to be kind to other people, or we could be kind to a child, and that comes so naturally to us. And yet it's like we can't give that to ourselves. So
absolutely.
I really like that kind of shifting of perspective and getting a little photo of our 3-year-old self.
It will make you cry. Try it. It actually made, the first time I did it, I bawled my eyes out.
Yeah.
I literally did. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And it's a really powerful tool, and yet such a simple one.
Yeah. And I wanted to sort of, I guess this segues into my next kind of thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is perfection. And I've often noticed a lot of people say to me, I don't think I'm a perfectionist because I've got a really messy desk and, my handwriting is terrible. But actually, I think perfectionism can show up in different ways. And I know you call it the perfection treadmill. Can you tell us about what you mean by that?
I do. And I call it the perfection treadmill because if you run on that thing for long enough, it's going to exhaust you and you're going to fall off no matter what. I talk about the perfection horizon. I have a little sort of kind of a scene that I set in the book where you're on this beautiful unicorn lilo, because unicorns don't exist, remember? And you're floating into the sunset and it's the horizon and you can see it and it's there and it's incredible, and just you're on your lilo and it's so lovely and it's perfect. And then you realize, oh, I've been paddling for quite some time and my lilo's losing a bit of steam now. I can't really find myself getting there, and what's going on? Before you know it, there's a few sharks around. You're thinking, oh crap, I really need to get back before this lilo bursts and I'm done for. And that, you know, for me, we as women in particular, men too, but women in particular, find that we want to be the most perfect versions of ourselves. You know, we strive every day. We want to be the best at everything. We want to be the best daughter, the best partner, the best sister, the best friend, the strongest women. Like I said earlier about JLo in the gym and Angelina in the nursery. You know, and we also want to be the least needy, right? We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to show our vulnerable side. And we just want to show everyone how perfect we are. And I think we're driven towards this so desperately that we do drive ourselves to exhaustion. That's the perfection treadmill for me. That's how I visualize it. It's just, for me, it's just, I want to get off, just press stop already. And so I think until we realize that perfect doesn't exist, our hunger for this perfection is just going to keep on pursuing and pursuing until we realize that, you know, it doesn't exist. It just doesn't. And look, I don't think we are to blame for this, because we're surrounded by images of perfection all the time. You know, magazines portray this image of perfection with airbrushing. You know, if you think about the perfect life that we learn about in Disney movies when we're kids, the princess, she gets swiped off her feet by the knight in shining armor and she lives happily ever after. That's an ideal of perfection. It doesn't exist. We all know that. Anyone who's in a committed relationship knows that there's no such thing as perfect. You don't ride off into the sunset. You know, your knight's not in shining armor 24/7. We do have disagreements and arguments and things that we sort of would like to change. And that's okay. And I used to always call myself a perfectionist. You know, I used to dine out on the fact that, oh, no, I'm a perfectionist, or I'm a control freak, I'm a high achiever. And I used to say things like, I have OCD tendencies. You know, these are really, really big words to throw around. And we do that quite a lot. You know, I've got an A-type personality. I'm just a real achiever. And, you know, they're quite dangerous monikers, because actually I did quite a lot of research into perfectionism. And in the book, I talk about the multidimensional perfectionism scale. And there are 3 types of perfectionists. So there's self-oriented perfectionists. Now, these are people who sort of strive for perfection in their personal lives. So they'll set themselves really high standards and high goals. So, you know, I want to get that guy, or I want to get that job, or I want to get an A in this test. And the problem is with this kind of perfectionism is that when they fail within a relationship or within the job, then they can feel depression and anxiety and very, very highly self-critical of themselves. The other type of perfectionist is an other-oriented perfectionist. Now, this, by the way, I've suffered from all 3 of these forms of perfection. And your listeners may pick out some of these traits that they might resonate with, or all, as in my case. So other-oriented, they believe that everyone around them should be perfect, right? So they sort of set unrealistic, high standards for everyone else. Let's take, for example, the Uber driver. Okay, you're in an Uber, you've paid him your money, or you're about to, and he's taking you the long way around. He's getting lost, and you're seething, and you're thinking, oh my God, this guy had one job to do. He had one job. That is his job. It's all he had to do. When you get out of the car and you tell your friends, this guy didn't know where he was going. Well, actually, did he really just have one job to do? The guy could have been on his second job of the day, or, you know, he could have been through a divorce that week, or he could have lost someone. We just don't know what's going on with other people, you know, and even in, let's say in my job. So I'm surrounded by script writers, by producers, by directors, by co-hosts. And I know that I go in and I do my job to the best of my ability. And I've been in jobs where I didn't think the script was up to scratch, or I didn't think the production was up to scratch, or the sound guy didn't key me up properly. And I, for a long time, would get really annoyed and irate, not to them to their face, but I would let it really affect me. And I'd kind of, I suppose the energy does sort of seep out of us, and I'd be kind of a bit irate and, oh, can I just write this bit of the script, please? Or can I, look, I'll just do the earpiece myself, or whatever it might be. And again, that, you know, when others don't meet our expectations, then that kind of perfectionism can really affect us in social surrounding, and it's quite dangerous. And then the third, and I believe which is the most dangerous in this day and age, because it is directly, I believe, linked to social media, socially prescribed perfectionists. So a socially prescribed perfectionist will believe that others, so let's say a parent or their child even, or a boss, or social media, or the following of social media, expect them to be perfect. So they will then set these really high standards and seek that approval from these external voices. And when that approval doesn't come, I mean, sometimes you could find yourself in a situation where you have a parent who's never going to think you're the best. A parent that, even though you think they should, they've got their own stuff going on, and they're never going to give you the approval that you so desperately seek. And so consequently, your self-esteem is going to take a hit on a daily basis. Look at social media. Really? Is everyone always going to love you? I don't think so. And so then what happens? You set yourself these expectations that you're going to come crashing down. So the perfection treadmill is and you know, like I say, it's called the multi-dimensional perfectionism scale. And I think that's for a reason, because it is way deep. There's so many layers to this. And it sort of forms the construct of the core of the book, even without knowing it as I was writing it. It's when I came across this, I realized that perfectionism is a huge issue.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. It's really interesting to hear it described like that, in those three ways that it can kind of show up for us.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess it comes down, I don't know, I can't remember where I read this. You know, perfectionism isn't just having high standards. It's feeling that nothing is ever good enough, or we're never good enough. And so I think that is almost like a universal thing that we have as human beings, of kind of not feeling good enough. It's hard to meet someone who doesn't have that, or hasn't experienced that in some area of their life, or at some time. So yeah, it's such a universal thing, I think.
Absolutely. And it's sort of been drip fed into us, like I say, from an early age, or from these external voices, or from the internal voices. And for whatever reason, we just seem to keep on wanting to strive for this thing that doesn't exist. And just how exhausting is that, right? How exhausting is it to always try to be the best of everything? And so for me, when I made my switch, it was a part of very many things that I switched. And that was one of them. I realized I couldn't be everything, and I didn't want to be anymore, because I started to enjoy being vulnerable. You know, when I met my husband, you know, the one I ended up marrying, not the one I cancelled the wedding to, which I do talk about in the book, because that's a whole other story. I realized that actually expectations are also really destructive. You know, we have this really bad habit of expecting so much of ourselves and of others, that let's take an example I talk about in the book, where, you know, this perfect couple, a perceived perfect couple, and they're both wonderful, and he's picking her up from the airport really, really early in the morning. He's expecting her to walk off the plane like, you know, Brigitte Bardot and smelling of roses. She's expecting him to be standing there with a bunch of roses and sort of do the dirty dancing, you know, the swing in the air as he sees her. And of course, he's outside waiting because it's early. He doesn't want to get a ticket. She's exhausted, and she's got her hair in a top knot. And there's this sort of like, well, why weren't you inside? And why didn't he have roses? And why, you know, why is she looking like that? And all of a sudden, this sort of expectation just ruins a perfectly beautiful moment. And, you know, I get people always saying to me, well, you know, he didn't send me flowers on Valentine's Day. So what? The expectation is there. So release yourself of all expectations, of expectations across the board. And I think then that becomes fundamentally helpful. Once you release yourself, it's a relief of expectation. And that really helps with perfectionism as well.
Yeah, that's so good to remember. Thank you. I wanted to ask you about, I suppose we talked a little bit about the inner work, and I wanted to ask you about the kind of external things, particularly two substances which are part of lots of people's everyday lives. caffeine and alcohol.
Oh,
Um, can you share a bit about what's your relationship with those things now, and how has that changed over the years?
wow. Well, these are two really big parts of my life, in particular alcohol, that I talk about very much so in the book. In the book, I talk about the groan syndrome. And the groan syndrome is when someone says to me, tell me about alcohol. Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? Can I drink? And I said, well, actually, here are the physiological effects. Actually, it's not that great for you. It potentially affects fertility. It affects your mental clarity. It can affect your skin. It can affect your mood. And all I hear is, and that's the groan. The groan is when you say to someone, can you cut back on alcohol for a couple of weeks and see how you feel? And I was the biggest groaner in the world. Honestly, I loved booze. I loved being the party girl. You know, I'm Irish, so I see it's kind of part of our culture to enjoy alcohol on a weekend. I was always the last girl on the bar partying, let's do a shot. And I loved the Drunk Amanda, and everyone loved the Drunk Amanda as well. And so for me, I decided to do a dry January the year I turned 40. And I remember it very, very vividly. And I really loved it. I thought, oh, this is great. I had a few scripts to learn, and I was retaining a lot more information. And when I was having conversations with people, I was really having that eye contact. And that was really quite different, because I would go out and I'd be talking to someone, and rather than sort of be looking around for the bar or looking for that crutch, or I feel a little bit nervous. Now, I'm not going to lie, the first time I went out without alcohol was really hard. That is, without a shadow of a doubt. Then I decided to do a dry February, March, April, May, June, turned 40 in the June, and thought, I'll go out, I'll have some parties, and I'll, have some drinks. And that was great. And then I decided to go again until the December, when I went to an engagement party, and I got so drunk that I puked all over my bedroom floor. And I remember I was single at the time, and I remember looking down at the floor going, you're such an idiot, you're such a failure, all of these horrible, nasty, negative voices. And it was the next day that I thought, you know what? I don't need to speak to myself like that. I don't need that sort of the hangover that I'm going through right now. I'm going to try and give up. So now I don't say that I'm a teetotal. I don't say that I don't drink, because I very rarely, but when I want to, I will have a drink. I just find that the side effect of not drinking for me is so overwhelmingly powerful that for me, it makes sense not to drink. So what I do in the book is, rather than say, look, these are the reasons you shouldn't drink, so stop now, I go into the why, right? I'll explain, this is what alcohol does to you. This is the after effects, the side effects. This is potentially why you're feeling, that you have extra flab around your belly, or that you're feeling really depressed on a Monday. I sort of talk about it as the tinnitus of life. So when you drink alcohol, the effects of alcohol stay in your system for about 5 days afterwards. So I've been drinking since I was 19. And if you think about every single weekend since I was 19, that's a whole lot of weekends. And that's a lot of 5-day periods in between where you don't really fully recover from the alcohol sort of tinnitus of that huzz, that fuzz in the background. So when you think about that, actually, when you do go sober for a little bit, the clarity is sort of really, and it's incredible. So I always really urge people to try it. And, I know that a lot of people will say to me, oh, I couldn't possibly give up alcohol. Well, actually you can, you just don't want to. You don't want to be the party pooper. You don't feel like you want to be the cool kid, right? You want to be the one who's sort of having the best time and the best friend to everyone. But the newsflash is that you can be all of those things without alcohol. You don't need alcohol to do those. We've just been pre-programmed into thinking that we can. And also something that's really interesting is that alcohol is allergic. We can be allergic to it both physically and emotionally. And physically means if you drink enough alcohol and you throw up, which is pretty much probably 99.9% of us. And emotionally allergic is if we are down and blue, have the fear, the darks, the guilts, whatever you want to call it, on a Monday or a Sunday. Mm. And that's emotionally allergic. And so I was emotionally and physically allergic to alcohol. And I just thought, why am I bothering with this? It just... And once I learned how to have a good time without it, that for me then was sort of it was a huge switch moment. It was a real aha light bulb moment for me. And so, yeah, now I know I can go out and have a shot of tequila or a bottle of wine if I want to, but my body sort of doesn't really want it anymore. It just kind of goes, I could take it or leave it. And trust me, this is coming from someone who loved alcohol and who thought that without alcohol, I would probably I might as well just get in a hole in the ground and die. So that's my alcohol experience. And then caffeine is another one. It's interesting because, look, I started out on a morning show, Ireland AM, and then I went on to the Big Breakfast. So, I would have about 9 coffees before 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I was a proper caffeine addict and had been for a very, very long time. I still love caffeine. I'm not going to lie. I love a cup of coffee. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to make that 1 cup of coffee a day really powerful. I make it really strong. I savor every second of it. Sometimes if I'm going out in the days when we could go to coffee shops and relax, I would go to a different coffee shop, or I would sort of try out different coffees everywhere and make it an occasion. And look, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that coffee's bad for you. Not at all. Actually, it is quite good for you in small amounts. But like everything, it's like the same way a glass of wine has slight antioxidant benefits. A whole bottle is going to put your system out of whack. So 1 coffee's great, maybe 2. Anything more than that, it's a stimulant. It messes with your cortisol levels, your adrenal glands, your insulin levels. I talk about a story in the book. If anyone's reading it, it's a fun story about a saber-toothed tiger and your adrenal glands going into overdrive when you see this tiger. And so then, then it's sort of the fight or flight thing happens, and then cortisol gets released, and then the insulin kicks in, and then you have the crash. And that's when you go for a second coffee or a third or a fourth. And so I tell people that, if you're in this cycle where you're having coffee to wake you up, and then you're crashing, and then you're having more caffeine to wake you up again, then that could potentially lead to adrenal fatigue, which I know a lot of people have heard about. It's sort of a buzz phrase. And that is if you have difficulty waking up in the morning, if you have extreme exhaustion, if you have digestive issues, if you're finding stress really hard to handle, your weaker immune system, so you're getting colds and coughs and flus, God forbid anything else, more easily, or you have this constant craving for caffeinated drinks, albeit Coke or coffee or Red Bull or whatever. They are all signs of adrenal fatigue, and so that's something to be really, really mindful of. So whilst I love my coffee, I have to be careful with it, and I have to sort of take a step back and switch it out for things like matcha or green tea or barley cup, which is non-caffeinated. So yeah, it's a slippery slope, one that I've been on many an occasion. I just think again, it's really when you get that natural energy back and don't wake up and feel the need for that coffee, that's a wonderful feeling.
You just sold it to me completely. I like how you described it, because you the way you describe it is just like, it's kind of like a no-brainer. It's like, why would I want to be getting drunk all the time or having loads of coffee, and without depriving ourselves, without saying, right, I'm never going to drink coffee again. Actually, I'm going to savor it. I'm going to enjoy it. It's going to treat it as something to really savor. I love that. Yeah.
Great. Now let's go for a drink and a coffee.
Yes, to celebrate. Amazing. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for everything that you've shared. It's been so
it's my
helpful.
Pleasure.
So helpful. And I do love that story that you mentioned just there in the book about the tiger and the adrenaline. It's very, very funny. So people have to buy the book to read that.
I mean, coffee's not quite as dangerous as a saber-toothed tiger, but it does have the same effect on your hormonal system, interestingly.
Yes.
So it's once you sort of understand that, then that kind of makes you go, ooh, you think twice about that third coffee or the fourth or the fifth. I think that's it. It's about just education about the body and the mind and things that happen on a physiological effect, and trying to make them fun, because the first draft of my book was really sciencey, and I had to go back and rewrite it and go, of course I've learned the science, but people don't want to hear the science. You want to hear the little stories and make it easier to understand, and that's what's really important.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Where can people follow you, and what else are you up to, and where can they buy your book? That sort
Oh
of
my
thing.
gosh, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting. The book is available at all good bookstores. I believe it's available on Amazon, at Waterstones Online. It's available in Ireland from Dubray and Eason's and the Book Depository worldwide, although I don't know that they ship worldwide because I haven't done my worldwide deal yet, but that's hopefully coming soon. And I'm on Instagram. I tend, interestingly, so that's something we didn't touch on a lot with social media. I try to stay away from Twitter because I don't find it a very positive experience.
Yes.
Instagram can have its moments, and I definitely try to encourage people not to look at their phones after a certain time in the evening, put it in a different room, sleep with it in a different room. That's a whole other podcast we could totally get into. I don't want to take up too much of your time. So yes, the answer is I am on Instagram at Amanda Byram. And, and I do people DM me all the time with questions and with issues that they have. And I like to coach people through it. And my husband always says, have you read the chapter in your book about staying off social media? Because I end up then just getting sort of into really deep conversations, which I do enjoy. So yeah, Instagram's it's a funny old place. It needs to be used wisely and very, very carefully. And once you do that, then I think it's okay. And what am I up to? Well, I'm sort of really enjoying the moment, because I used to be that person who would live goal to goal and job to job and check the box and done, next, let's look forward, without championing the successes of the previous, goal or achievement. And it's something that I've really learned to do, is just go, let's take a moment. You're an author. Okay, let's pat ourselves on the back. Go you. Let's just enjoy this. And then whatever happens next, and just sort of live in the now, really. So, it's all very exciting.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, sorry, that's always the annoying thing that people do. Like, once you've just launched this big project, people are like, what are you doing next? So yeah, I hope
absolutely.
glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, no, and it's sort of a natural question, isn't it? And as a TV presenter and interviewer, it's the first question I ask. It's always the one I round off with as well. And it's only really, I suppose, since I've done a lot of self-introspection and sort of taking that breath and taking that moment, that I realized, maybe I shall not do anything next. Maybe I shall just sit still with this.
Sounds good.
So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's been absolutely brilliant.
Oh, it's a pleasure to talk to you.